This is the Live Well and Thrive podcast, hosted by Michael Torsha, health and wellness expert. It's time to shape up, America.
Hi, this is Mike Torsha, and welcome to Live Well and Thrive. I really want to share with you that we need your support. I have really wonderful guests that come on to give you great information on how to change your life forever, live a better quality life. So if you have people you care about, share this episode. I have my dear friend, Sebastian Siegel. He is not only a fitness authority, an accomplished writer, producer, director, just an all-around great guy. Welcome to the show, Sebastian.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. So, Sebastian, what's going on?
Good things are going on. Crazy time in the world. And I think, in terms of fitness and bodybuilding and how that has related for you and for me and so many others now, as more and more people are working out into commitment and success and follow through with everything. You see so many people trying to affect the world now who aren't really committed long term, who are just giving voice to things. But I think commitment now is more important than ever.
I mean, I really feel that your bodybuilding training, because you are a bodybuilder. I mean, I've competed, but you've been on over 100 covers worldwide. I really feel that when you bodybuild, you develop this work ethic where you're so focused in the gym. And if you take that type of dedication, tenacity, and focus on anything, you could become successful at anything in life. And I've seen you be just this fitness model, this bodybuilder in the gym, end up being a brilliant writer, a motivational speaker, a spiritual leader. I mean, you do these private events for meditation and creating wellness mentally, physically, and emotionally. You have that film, Grace and Grit, which now I see is making a big comeback. So you've taken that mindset from being a bodybuilder and applied it towards your whole life, your whole career. Tell me about how that's really affected you, fitness grooming you for life.
So beautifully expressed. I think about being a kid and being 13, 14, 15, right? And just loving working out just for the feeling of it. For me, having the family separated between different states and countries and having that one thing like, okay, if I work out, if I do a bunch of push-ups, sprints at 12, 13, whatever, that it feels great. And then all of a sudden, over a period of very short amount of time, feeling like, wow, I feel my body developing. And not even from an egoic place, just a sense of like, wow, if I do this thing that feels good, I can affect the world. I can touch things. In other words, I can transform myself into this character that I want to be. I can, in other words, forge my identity, and my character through this. And that really comes from the commitment and the follow through and the discipline. And I think you and I were lucky, really, in so many ways to fall in love with that. And so then, therefore, to fall in love with the work ethic, that it was like, okay, relationship, work, whatever the things were, good or bad, I'm working out every day, no matter what, right? And that's this sort of through line. And I really took those same sort of principles of saying, I'm going to stay in it. Doesn't matter if it feels good, if it hurts, I'm staying in this thing to the end once I know what I want to do. If that's a relationship that I'm in, if that's a vocation. So certainly with the film, with my first 2 documentaries and then with Grace and Grit, I'm saying I'm staying in this and this is worth the price of the candle. I'm going to do this again and again and again and again. And the same thing with real estate and business. I'm going to stay in this, and I'm going to give myself to this. And life goes by like that. And the people, success leaves clues, right? And I look around, failure leaves clues. And I look around all the people who are failing, who come to, a place like California and have a dream to do something, whether it's in fitness and bodybuilding or in movies or in architecture and food or real estate or other things. And they want to do this, that, this, but there's no through line. It's failure, it's impulsive. But everyone who's saying, I'm going to stay in this, succeeds at the highest level. And so that's an easy track to follow. It just says, all right, this day I'm going to skip this party, I'm going to skip this wedding, I'm going to skip this funeral, I'm going to skip these other things because there's something deep inside of me that's calling so profoundly that I have to do that thing. And that's really that work ethic, right?
It's incredible because bodybuilding is giving you that roadmap. Just like I remember when I first met Joe Weider, he had flown me out here because I wrote a letter to him. And he invited me to come out, sent me the ticket. I stayed at some Marriott hotel and I went up to Woodland Hills to see him. And he expressed to me, he goes, Michael, I've been following your career. But the problem is you have that old school approach of gaining lots of weight and then extremely strict dieting, and then you lose a lot of that muscle mass, that precious muscle. If you stay in shape your whole life, all year round, you have to think of yourself as a classic pianist. They play the piano 14, 16 hours a day, every day, all year round. You're a part-time bodybuilder. You just prepare for a show 3 or 4 months before, and then you expect to like win a show. You've placed well, but you haven't truly perfected it. And one of the things I could share with you is focus on, number one, your weak points, and pull back from focusing on your strong points, because you need to improve your proportions, your symmetry, and overall presence on stage. You start dieting and staying somewhat fit, maybe no more than 10, 12 pounds over your competition weight. You'll become more defined. The skin will get nice and thin, because I'm sure you're eating a lot of dairy. I saw your skin was getting thick at some times, because I see you on stage and you look magnificent. Then you blow up like 40, 50 pounds, which is the typical old ways of doing it, but that's not how you do it. So if you're willing to commit, I will support you with my publication. And sure enough, it changed my life forever. I ended up winning Teenage Mr. America, Collegiate Mr. USA, and many other national titles, and a top contender when it came to the bodybuilding nationals. But he taught me that be aware of your body and the balance, and then focus on those weak points to bring them up, because if you have an overdeveloped chest, it makes your shoulders and arms look smaller. Downsize, work on just the shape of the pecs, work on the bicep, tricep, deltoid, rear delt, so on. So I took that same roadmap, and then after I stopped competing, I said, well, now I got to focus on my weak point, and that's making money. I lived at home with my parents. I never had to worry about it. Now I'm on my own. So then I focused on making money, and I was driven. So I feel bodybuilding is one of the best things people should do. But as you know, what's happening in bodybuilding now, with all these bodybuildings dying because they're taking these horrible amounts of drugs. And that's something I'd like to share with you. What are your thoughts now when you see a bodybuilder? Now, you know, when I competed, and Arnold and Frank and all those guys competed, Frank Zane, Bob Paris, those magnificent looking physiques, narrow waist, V-taper, broad shoulders, perfect abs, diamond calves, shredded quads, and everything was proportioned. Now, what do you think about the pro bodybuilders today, especially with the Olympia?
You know, there are so many amazing guys out there. There's so many amazing athletes, men and women. And, you know, some of the guys that I see at Gold's, you know, every week, who are just amazing, right? Extraordinary, you know. And when I watched, you know, Phil Heath is a friend, and obviously, you know, Jay and a number of different guys. But in terms of from the old school to coming into now, like Sergio Olivio is a friend. He looks insane. The guy looks so amazing. Right?
Yeah,
he's gargantuan, right? But this sort of bridge, you know, and the pressure, that's being driven for these guys to push the limits, of what's possible, which is what that sport is, you know, from a judge, you know, in terms of the Mr. Olympia contest. And I think that, you know, the athletes, you know, all these guys who are, you know, showing up again and again, have this ridiculous work ethic, you know, and love this sport, and all have something like Phil showed, you know, in his documentary, coming from some sort of pain and transmuting that into a sense of purpose and drive, you know, and follow through. And I think that the standard, right, really in the sport is, you know, being pushed from the outside in to make physical demands, that are hard, you know, on the athletes. And you've seen it across sports, right? Not just in the Mr. Olympia, right? Seeing it in the Olympics, and seeing it in all the weird things happening with, like, you know, men, you know, X chromosome and X versus XY chromosome in the same sport. I mean, you know, this is insane. Like, so what's happening? And I think at some point, you know, individuals collectively have to have an integrity and say, okay, look, this is what we're doing. This is what we love. You know, and this is why we're really in this thing. Who do you think is going to win the Olympia?
I'm thinking in a lot of different ways. My choice is probably Derek, as long as he comes in defined and hard and not holding water, because he's very symmetrical. He's massive. He has muscularity, but there's certain areas like his pecs and other areas that weren't as defined, as dense as they should be. And again, I go back to Joe Weider's way, because if you see him in the off season, he really blows up and gets very watery. I think if he maintained a more of a balanced physique where he's not too heavy and so full of fluid, he won't sacrifice the quality. I think he needs to maintain its fine line. But, there's a few other bodybuilders like Samson and others, tremendous genetics. And if they come peaked, he could have trouble. They can knock him off the stage, so to say. But I truly think that Derek, if he really comes in rock hard, he'll end up getting it, again. But there's a lot of bodybuilders that are very, very close to him. As you've seen before, a lot of the bodybuilders that you thought would continue on were beaten. I mean, Haney knew that, it was a matter of time. He quit while he was ahead because he wanted to be unbeaten, right? Yeah. But I just feel that watching the bodybuilders, a lot of them blow up so big and swollen. I think they should just focus on getting the definement in that density instead of swelling up. And you can see how they're eating. They show massive amounts of food and carbs. I tell people at my peak, I ate 3 meals a day. Even when I trained with Mike Menser, many of the pros, they just ate 3 meals a day. People are overfeeding themselves. Then they have to do these extreme amounts of cardio because they consume so many calories. And as you know, when you do extreme carbohydrates will swell up in the system, so you have to do all this cardio. Then you're suppressing your testosterone, elevating your cortisol levels. So it's counterproductive. So I truly feel if people stop eating so excessively, give your digestive tract time to rest. If you're eating 6 times a day, it's constantly overworking. And then people don't understand why I have to do cardio. Then they go, wait a minute, I'm a little watery. There was so many, like Sergio Oliva. He was a champion.
Senior,
the senior. But he never came in sharp. He just never did. But he had magnificent freak genetics. I mean, he's a wonderful friend, and God bless his soul. He was an inspiration to me. But he was never defined. And my God, he should have been Mr. Olympia, unstoppable for many years, but because he never could peak. There's a lot of the bodybuilders out there that are magnificent, but they never were good at peaking.
I think your call on is right with Derek. Yeah, I would say I'm going to call for an upset, right? That I think Samson, and I sent him a message the other day, and I said, that guy just looks, man, he looks good. He looks really great. And then I would say Hadi second, and I would say Derek in third. That's going to be my call. Now, if Sergio Oliva, I don't see him as on the qualification list. I don't know if he's going to compete, but he looks unreal. And I would say I'd be concerned for those guys if he's going to be on stage. But also Hunter Labrada, Lee Labrada's son, just won a show. And that guy's massive, and he's also under the coaching of his father, who's a legend as well. So I would say, and he's going to be in the O. So I think he'll be top 5 for sure. Top 4 would be my guess.
I think this year he will. He made a lot of improvements. But if you notice, his father had a magnificent physique, narrow waist, broad shoulders, sweeping, He has more of a thick, stocky build. If you looked at the pictures when he was younger, he actually had similar genetics as his dad. He squats wider, which helps build the hip area. He widened his waist. He did a lot of power movements to get so big, and he took away from the beautiful symmetry that he had. I think that's a problem. But also, his left pec is torn. You can see significant tear, which is distracting, just like when Dorian Yates tore his bicep. Yeah, when Tom Platz tore his...
Phil had the hernia.
And the hernia there.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen, but I think it's excessive amounts of weight where the muscles become stronger than the tendons and ligaments. And people empowered don't realize that they're getting the fibrous tear, which eventually one day it just pops. Not even with the heaviest weight. It could be the first or second set. So I tell people, be aware of your body. I always trained like the pros taught me. The beginning, you train your body parts twice a week. The first time you train it that week, more heavy, a lot of volume. And then the second time, you do more shaping, more contouring. This way, you're not putting the overload on your joints and your tendons and your ligaments. But these guys are hitting it heavy, hard, twice and sometimes even 3 times a week. And I'm like, you know what? It's a matter of time, and I see all these injuries, the torn bicep, torn pec, meniscus. It's just rampant. And with bodybuilders taking excessive amounts of drugs, they're dying. Here's a beautiful sport that's been tainted because of the drugs. The drugs that they take now, it's chemical warfare. That's what it is. And it's almost like who's taking the most drugs, and of course has the best genetics. And I just think we need to create a cultural shift in bodybuilding to get back to that Sebums, and that Bob Paris look, the Frank Zane look, beautiful, appealing. But the audience that goes there, they want to see a freak show, unfortunately.
When I did my first cover, right, my first of over 100, and I was one of the last covers that Joe Weider selected, right? That was first for Men's Fitness. And when I went in there, he was like, look, they said, this year, the cover, every year it's going to be 12 covers. That's it, before social media. And it's like, okay, Sly's going to be on one every year for sure. And Arnold's going to be on one. And then you're going to have the winner of the Super Bowl, quarterback or the receiver. Somebody's going to be on one. And then the winner of maybe something in tennis or hockey will be on one, or baseball. And then, they'll have some other kind of like sports figure. So really you're only looking at 2 or 3 covers a year that an athlete can do, and then after I did that first, I was on a couple of years. I was lucky, fortunate, right place, right time. And it was interesting because you and I have trained together a number of times, over the last 20 years. And like same thing with Rick Valente, right? Who's like, a major figure in sort of fitness and bodybuilding. And you, me, Rick, a number of guys who have had longevity. Always, I was training my whole life, never that heavy. High volume, high reps, pushing myself to the limit, going for feel of saying like, what do I feel like where my heart rate is up really high, but the volume of blood is up high, that I'm doing like, let's say in the squat rack, a moderate weight, which for me would be 225, to the floor, 20 reps, something like that. But like, maybe 315, even 20 years ago at the heaviest, I could squat more than that, but I'm going for reps and going for volume because I want to feel good. I don't want to tear anything. And I've had basically no injuries, my whole career, just like you. And it's amazing because I see you right down at the gym and I see you doing the leg extension, same thing, heavy, but not super heavy, and high reps, and your quads, thick, shredded, unreal, and you think like the density. It's interesting. I also think about, the relationship between success and commitment and follow through, and how success leaves clues. That picture, one of the most iconic pictures in front of Gold's Gym with you and all these legendary bodybuilders. And, when I was looking at that after you and I became friends, I was looking at that picture and I thought, that's Mike Torsha. Yeah. That's my boy right there. And like some of the, Chris Dickerson's and everybody's in that photo, Yeah, it was great. I felt like this is how it was for me. Same thing. I was down at Gold's Gym in Venice, 9:00 on a Saturday night, squatting, whatever, for 2 hours, and nobody's around, no cameras, nothing. David Paul's in the back on the treadmill. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everyone's down there, there's the greatest athletes in the world, coming down there to work out because of the love of it. Now it's become this sort of, global epicenter for people to get involved in it as a business. But you see those people coming and going, on Instagram and social media, coming in, some incredible athletes, but for the most part, people just trendy, coming and going, endorsing 1 million products for sale, happy to endorse 1 million products. And then you see 3 months later, all those companies drop them because they've retained now all their following. The athlete's now expendable, versus the endorsement of an athlete who is a long-term athlete. It's interesting, I've had, as you have had, you've trained some of the greatest actors, and athletes in the world. And I've had some of the best athletes across a range of sports that I've worked out with together, whether it's Mike Tyson or William Trubridge, the greatest freediver in the world, a good friend of mine. We've done a number of different, from ice to ice bathing to kayaking out to other islands to swimming to freediving. Laird Hamilton, obviously, I've been to his house a number of times doing his incredible workout under the water, and the factor between all these athletes is really about doing this for the love of it, not about competing. The people who are coming into it to succeed on one level, who really cares who you beat? No one really cares in terms of longevity, right? The only way someone's going to stay in something is to say, man, I love this thing. I love this thing. It's like for me, I'm mapping out my day to day and I'm saying, all right, I'm going to come to Mike's show. Where's my workout going to happen? Like, it doesn't have to happen first, but boy, it has to happen. If 9:00 tonight rolls around, it hasn't happened, I'm going to make sure it happens.
Well, it is important that you actually figure out the exact time you're going to train. That's why they do the time blocking. You know, you do it's sort of like your checklist on steroids, where you not only make a plan of what you're going to do that day, but exactly at what time you're going to do it. That's what George Washington and Thomas Edison, they use time blocking, where you just say, at this time, I'm going to do these emails and these calls. This time, I'm going to have that meeting or going to have a lunch. And then 2 hours later, I'm going to have maybe the workout or whatever it is, and your day is completed. And I find time blocking was exactly what has helped me be successful, not only in bodybuilding, but in business in general. Because if you just say, I'm going to do these 10 things, maybe you'll get 6 done or 5 things or whatever, but you're rushing through it. No, if you have the exact time you're supposed to do it, and you're so focused, you'll get it done. You know,
it's the same for me in terms of my first, when I came here and I had nothing, and then it was like I was starting to shoot the magazine covers, and I was, doing things in film, and I was very fortunate to starting to work as an actor. And then it was like when I started getting involved in media and real estate and owning health companies, from all that stuff, it was really about that, saying like, what's my priority, right, in the day? And then I went from in my early 20s to having nothing to being a millionaire before I was 29. Yeah. And it was really exactly what you're saying, just about saying, all right, what is it? What interests me? And it wasn't just the procurement of money, but it was to say, wow, with those things, I can open up the world and I can touch the world. I can change the world. I can do things. I can influence, I can create this beautiful life for myself and everyone that I come into partnership with. Yeah. And that was really about saying, all right, what are my priorities and what's my priority in the next 24 hours? Right. Well, and setting that every day.
I've watched you grow in many ways, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I saw when you were first putting together Grace and Grit, you made sure you had the right actors for the role that really understood your vision and where you feel that they're going to do the best job possible. You handpicked everybody, the locations, everything was meticulous. And your hard work is shown, because especially what you were at the
Mexican consulate.
Mexican consulate. And how were they? Very receptive, I'm sure.
That was interesting because I'm British and American, right? And not Mexican, but I went to a Mexican school as a kid in San Antonio. And the movie has ended up now becoming one of the top watched movies in Latin America, Mexico, Argentina, Costa Rica, etc. And we don't advertise it at all down there. But it was because this film identifies with that culture, that this culture is identifying with that story about sort of transcendence, commitment, sacrifice, kind of, pushing.
And it's a true story, correct?
It's a true story, yeah. Love beyond life, kind of what lasts, kind of beyond us. What are the sacrifices that we take in this life? So Grace and Grit, that story, when I read the book, I was like, wow, this book blew me away. And what is the story here? And it's not just a story about a man and a woman falling in love. It's a story about sacrifice. It's a story. And this movie's not for everyone. It's a hard watch. So when the Mexican consulate invited me to come screen it there, they said, look, this movie's really popular in Latin America. Why don't we do a showing? And it was full house. Frances Fisher came. And Frances is such a brilliant actress. One of the greatest actresses.
She lights up the room.
She's of all time, right? And she's so present. She's watching the movie and she's crying her eyes out again, again, because she's like, and that's that same commitment, really, that it's saying, I'm in this because I love it. And for her, she's also a lifetime member, actor studio, in it because she loves it, right? And that's the same thing. And so it was, to see those or to feel those synchronicities, like the Mexican consulate, screening my film because it's so popular in Latin America, is nice because it says, okay, I'm touching the world in a way. I'm doing something just from my commitment and my follow through, my love to devote myself, my resources, my time, finances, emotional, everything, right? It matters. Like it opens up the world. And then when we went to that, we did that screening, it was full house, right? And a lot of people from around the world, who showed up, very influential people, and sports and politics and media came, and people were like, wow, I didn't expect that.
Well, I noticed on Rotten Tomatoes, 85%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, really, seriously, if you look at most of the movies out there today, and you're lucky if they get a 30 or 40, you got 85%.
Like that, and 90% on Amazon. Yeah. And one of the most popular movies in Latin America. And it's very interesting because the movie's triggering. It's hard film to watch, like like Philadelphia is a hard film to watch, you know, and it's somewhere sort of between Titanic and Philadelphia. It's like this epic love story, but it's also really intense, you know, and all the critics, you know, from you know, Deepak Chopra and Alex Gray and you know, John Mackey, you know, who owns Whole Foods, said this film's extraordinary, you know, and yet we got 2 bad reviews, and so all the reviews are great. And there's no middle ground reviews. And then there's 2 horrible reviews. Right? And one of them was this one woman at the New York Times, you know, hammered it. It was like this hit piece. It's the worst, you know, movie ever made. You know what I mean? And all these directors called me after seeing that, yeah, and said, listen, you've made a significant artwork. And don't worry about it, because your film is so important that they were triggered by it. And the directors like, you know, Lee Daniels, like Tyler Perry, like, you know, I mean, a number of different, you know, incredible filmmakers, Tony Kaye, who an American History X, saying like, listen, don't listen to the critics. If they're worked up, that means you're doing something right. Yeah.
100%. But also, too, you got to remember, it's subjective. Mm-hmm. Their interpretation might be affected because maybe their mother, their father, or their son committed suicide, which touches on a sore subject. So right away, they shut down, and they didn't even really enjoy the journey of seeing this whole movie to the end. They might have just picked out things that reminded them of their past. I mean, but that also is like, goes across the board. It's even the reporters with the recent presidential debate. You could see a lot of these moderators were favoring one candidate and coming after someone when they should be impartial. And so that's how life is. So you know what? Not everybody's going to love you, but that's okay. The bulk of it is you did a beautiful movie. People admire your accomplishments. And, you know, to get a couple of bad reviews, maybe they're just having a bad day and they just took it out on you. I never take it that way because, you know, I always take the compliments as okay, that's great. But when someone criticized me when I was first competing, it fueled my drive and ambition to look even better. So they couldn't say anything the next time. I shut them up, you know?
Also, you know, hate is a relationship of respect. And I'm comfortable with that. You know, that like if somebody really is worked up about you, wow, okay, you're doing something that's impacting their world. That's okay. You know, I bring it. Your opinion of me has, I have no business in your opinion of me. Like, no, enjoy that, you know, if you will.
Even with this show, it's so funny. I read all the posts, everything that people say. And a couple of guys going, oh, Mike, you look like you're on so many steroids. Look at you. And I laugh, and I'm like, thank you. Because if they think I look that good, I take it as a accomplishment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just got to take it with a grain of salt, you know? But I think as long as you don't let it get into your head and bring you down, that's okay.
You know, it's so funny. I was watching something recently, you know, and I'm working on this documentary right now, right? I'm working on 2 films. One is a chess movie, an epic true story, like a big, fairly large budget film about the youngest chess grandmaster. And then I'm doing a documentary about longevity. And of course, you will be in it, right? And a lot of the greatest athletes across sports, you know, guys over and women over a certain age who have not about science, not about, you know, ideology, but just who's been doing these things for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and are outstanding. People who are like diving the deepest in the world and climbing Mount Everest and bodybuilding and fitness and running and triathlons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was looking at different stuff to reference it, you know, and I was looking at somebody who was critiquing, you know, pumping iron, and they were talking about, oh, look at this clip of Arnold, and he's like, they were saying that he was taking cocaine on the night, you know, on the during the show, and I was like, this person's never worked out in their life. Like this guy is like that day, you know, of the Olympia, they have no idea what that. Of course, like this guy couldn't be more sober, and couldn't be more alive, and couldn't be more electric, you know, in that moment, and it just made me, you know, respect and appreciate that man, you know, and all these athletes, you know, even more so. You know, and really appreciate, wow, that dislike and that envy, you know, you bring it, you know, like the kite flies highest against the wind, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was there at that Olympia when they filmed it with Pumping Iron, and there's no way Arnold was doing cocaine.
Of course.
No way. Well, he smoked pot afterwards, of course. That's how he was relaxed, but that's after the show. But, when people would say extreme things like that, he was a genetic freak. He really was. I mean, I watched him train 3 months before the Olympia, and the man just responded. And what he would do is every year, he would take 3 months off. He wouldn't go anywhere near a gym. He would just eat normal, bring down his weight. He looked just like an average guy, kind of, looked like he's built. But then he'd get in the gym and he'd be training with me and Franco and whoever would be there in those periods of time. And every day, he just started to see his body morph into a magnificent physique. And it was magical to watch him. But he took it very serious, as you know how he is. And he had that narrow focus. But Arnold even said to me, Mike, listen, I didn't have the best calves. My lower back was weak. My triceps were underdeveloped compared to my biceps. But that's why I did all those twisting poses. And I would turn the body. He taught me that because he goes, Mike, you're not going to have perfect genetics like some of these guys. So you have to be very careful. He also taught me that when you're on stage, they tell you to relax. Never relax. Because then you keep the, like for instance, if you're in the line and they're looking at you from the back, contract your abdominals. That brings out the Christmas tree striations. So your back looks incredibly freaky. Just by contracting your abdominals brings the erector muscles out, brings out the detail. Most people don't know that. Also, Mike, when you go from pose, if they say quarter turn to the right, quarter turn to the right, every time you turn, make it a pose. Make it a pose.
Artwork.
And when you're posing, make it beautiful like Ed Corney. And now it's choppy. You're a piece of art that comes alive. And I remember when he told me when I first came to Gold's Gym, think of your body as a piece of clay, and the equipment in the gym are the tools to sculpt that magnificent physique. And that changed my life forever. You can change all the things that you're unhappy with. You need to focus. So these little things that Arnold passed on to me, I've passed on to other bodybuilders that became champion bodybuilders because we paid it forward. But what I don't like is on YouTube and these other platforms, pros are breaking down the drugs they take, the excessive amounts of overtraining they do, excessive amounts of food they consume to breed this horrible, unhealthy way of bodybuilding. And that's why I created Live Well and Thrive. And having people like you that share sensible ways. I remember we were at the Equinox on Sepulveda there, and you would finish off your leg routine by doing the lunges on the steps coming up and then down at a really great pace and then coming up, and really I could see you were feeling the calf, the quads, the glutes, the hip firing. And you had this
I'd carry someone
you first warmed up and then you add more weight, and bring someone on your shoulders. It was so impressive to see you were meticulous. Everything you did was meticulous. And if someone worked with you, you're like, let's go. There's no sitting around talking. You were never talking shit like, hey, what are you going to do later? No, it was all about training. You did chest, you talk chest. Doing legs, you talk legs. The burn you were feeling, the stretch you were feeling, right? And I was so proud to watch you morph into this incredible man that had this magnificent physique. You never got distorted looking. You always had a very balanced physique, but you mentally and physically were at balance and centered. And I love what you're doing with the meditation that you do at your home and other places now. I see that you're doing on Instagram and some of the others, and you have a great following. That work ethic, right? And it's interesting talking also about particularly what your stamp is to sort of live well and thrive. And I think about, I love to train every day, but sometimes it's, if I've been training in the gym and I've been pushing to the limit, X number of days in a row, I'll go for a super long bicycle ride or a long swim or a hike or something like this, And when I shot the first cover for Men's Fitness, I'm 6'1", I was about 200 pounds. And now I'm about 200 pounds.
slight, maybe not quite as muscular, but pretty subtle difference,
Yeah.
And I knew, like the way you were talking about the sort of posing, when I was doing the covers, whether it was Reps or, Bill Phillips Muscle Media or Muscle and Fitness or Men's Fitness, it was all the same thing. My waist is 31. I've got a broad shoulders. I'm 200 pounds, sizable, like Sergio Oubre was 6 foot, 200 pounds, I think, when he came in second, right, in that Olympia that's in pumping iron. But I knew how to turn, stand, and same thing, and people will see me in a shirt and they'll be like, you're in good shape. And then I take off my shirt and be like, holy God.
Oh, it's a whole nother level when you take your shirt off.
Holy smokes, what are you training
I've
for?
heard so many people say, oh my God, it's so Sebastian was bike riding, took his shirt off. Holy shit. Yeah, but that's good. It's better.
I'll take it.
Most people look better with the clothes on.
I'll take it. And I'm the same. I'm very low. I'm 4 or 5% body fat, but that's not out of it's just saying like this. I love to eat this way. I love to train this way. But when I was shooting, the covers, when the magazines existed, I know how to turn just slightly to make that aesthetic, look. It was very interesting. When Bill Phillips, when he had, Muscle Media, and that was one of my favorite mags as well. Oh,
that was a great magazine.
So well written, and some beautiful photography by Kelly Yee. The time, and they would fly me down to Texas to shoot those covers, and they would really have fun with it. They say, like, how do you want to do this? You know what I mean? And we would just come up with ideas, and they would roll with it. They would go, I was doing one cover for Muscle and Fitness, and they were talking about how they were shooting these different covers. And one time Joe was getting so excited with this magazine with Frank Zane, and they had run out of film in the camera, and it was like Frank was standing there, and it was so beautiful. And Joe goes, and he goes, look, we got to reload the camera. There's no more film. And Joe goes, I don't care, just shoot it anyways. You know what I mean? And I loved that thought, that idea, that thing, because it's like, all right, we can't make this an aesthetic or a discipline only when it's in public, right? It has to be an aesthetic when you're alone or when you're just with your friends, And so for me, that same work ethic, right, that you carry is like, I get up in the morning, I make my shake or my tea or whatever. And I think to myself, am I doing this sloppy? Or am I giving my love to this? Am I giving my care to this? And if I give my care to this, then next thing you know, I'm giving my care to everything. And then by the time I leave the house, I'm already in this graceful dance that's carrying all day long. And people want to come into that, and you embody that. Yeah.
Well, we were fortunate to get to know Joe so intimately. Really, he was such an inspiration. And him and Ben really created this world of what we now call bodybuilding. From the very beginning, they were dedicated and created the magazine and all the other product lines and so on, but he was a real character. And I'll tell you something, to be, I guess, the last cover he ever did, I mean, how did you end up getting to be that, get on the cover, especially the last cover that Joe oversaw? Because I remember he would handpick who'd be on the cover. He would choose that. He'd have his glass to go over the different pictures to the side, bring you down to the top 3, So how were you so fortunate to get that last cover with him?
When they invited me to go, what was on Irwin Boulevard? Was that
Irwin Street?
Irwin Street, right? And, and
Woodland Hills,
and they invited me to come in, and took some Polaroids, that was Bill Geiger at the time, right?
Oh,
Was Muscle
great photographer.
And, And then, oh my God, who was it? The editor then at the time. And so, anyway, so they invited me to come in, and they're like, all right, listen, we don't know whether we want to, if we should, propose that you're on the cover of Muscle Fitness or Men's Fitness, because you're kind of right there, in the middle, at the time, right, between fitness and bodybuilding. And then I went in and I was like, listen, I really want to do this. And every week I was relentless, just sending them stuff. I was shooting with all these photographers then. And I thought, like, this is just something special. And I saw, like, Pam Anderson was on one of the Men's Fitness covers. I was like, wow, this is really versatile, And then I saw Arnold's on one and Sly's on one. And then, the guy who won the Super Bowl, the quarterback's on one. And I was like, wow. And I'm just pushing, saying there's something special here, that's penetrating kind of popular media. And then at some point they called me in the morning and they said, hey, listen, we flew this guy out from Texas and he's not in great shape. Do you still want to shoot a cover? Right. And it's for Men's Fitness. And I said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'm in the shape that I'm always in, And they said, can you be here in 30 minutes? And I said, sure. So I went over there and we shot it, and then that was it. I forgot about it. And then like 3 months later or something, I was at Gold's Gym and I'm training. It's like a Saturday early evening, that's my night, I'm going to, and the editor came up to me at the time. And he says, listen, he goes, the way it works is we have a triangle of covers and there's like 4 across the bottom and then 3, like you're saying, and then 2 and then 1. And we rearrange them according to who's going to be the cover that month. And then we'll push the other ones for later, potentially another time. Like Stallone will be there, and Arnold will be there, and then et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, and this month, he goes, we kind of had you on the top, and Joe, came in and he was like, that's the guy. That's going to be the cover for Men's Fitness in April.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was so grateful and humbled, and appreciative of that, because it was really a byproduct of just my discipline and my love, for sort of fitness and bodybuilding, and that work ethic of solitude. So many nights and days alone in the gym doing this thing because we love it. That's it, And I think that the people, who are at the gyms around the world, the hole-in-the-wall gyms particularly, which Gold's Venice epitomizes, and I hope it stays that way. It's starting to get a little too fancy in there, for me. Yeah. But I don't know. But that's where the camaraderie is, where the friendships are forged, where you run into someone and says, hey, I you see me, hey, how can I spot you? Can I help you? Like what, let's do this thing together.
Well, but that's the old days.
Sacred adventure. Yeah.
Like I remember when I was a teenager and I'd be in Gold's Gym in Venice, pros would invite me to work with them.
Yeah.
Now there's someone using a piece of equipment and you go to ask, can I work in? No, I have 5 sets. I'm like, and then they're on their phone. It's changed. Even I was like a nobody. I was like a beginner. And here's this champion bodybuilder that I walked up to, and he said, sure, let's go, kid. He didn't care about taking the weights off. He loved to inspire people. I mean, I'm talking about the greats.
It's so great you brought that up, because disclaimer to anyone listening, right? When someone says, do you mind if I work in? The answer is always, yes, please work in with me, 100%, right? And also the question isn't, can I work in? Really, it's, do you mind? Because I don't care if you mind. I'm working in anyways, right?
Yeah.
And same thing happened for me when I first came to California, and Lou Ferrigno was working out on something and he invited me to work in with him. And Dexter Jackson, winningest bodybuilder in history. I was doing a leg curl one day and he was doing it. He's getting ready for the Olympia. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, man, work in. I see your discipline, your work ethic. We became friends, from that. And it was like, that's the mentality of leadership. That's the mentality of a champion, to say, yes, come, we rise to the top of this mountain together. And the people who don't, who are shut off to that, boy, they're missing out.
Well, the thing is, these people don't understand that, say if they did work in with you,
to share, to
they'd
learn,
have
to grow.
a chance to truly see how to train correctly. Because I would watch this guy just train. He was jerking the weights. He's going to tear his hamstring and cause probably knee damage. And I just said, if this man just realized that I'm here to encourage and help pass it on, but he doesn't see it, he's ignorant. So I just moved on. But I just said to myself, when I was a young buck and I walked into the gym, those champions had no issue whatsoever bringing me in and say, yes, let's go. Let's do it together.
Yeah.
None. So I hope that it changes, because I truly feel that it's an obligation, like we're a doctor, we take an oath, to help people, to make sure they don't get hurt, that they get the best possible results from all their hard work, so they continue this the rest of their life. Because, I know, like you, I'm excited. When I walk in the gym, I can't wait. And I'm hearing people like right next to me go, oh God, I got to do legs today. Man, I love to do legs. I can't wait to squat and get that high, And so that mindset, I feel bad for them, because they're here because they feel like they're forced.
Like obligation.
Instead of coming here for the enjoyment of the physical, emotional, and sometimes even spiritual stimulation,
Completely. I'll look at my schedule and I'll be like, wow, okay, looking over my day and say, well, I don't know what's going to go wrong or right today, but man, I'm training thighs today. I'm excited. Like, that's going to go great.
No. Well, listen, we have to wrap it. We're getting late, but thank you so much, Sebastian. I really appreciate you coming here and sharing all the wonderful things that are going in your life and your philosophy. So thank you.
Yeah, you're a brother. You're a legend, man. It's such great to be here, man. Thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you for watching. Live well and thrive. And please, if you have people you care about, share this episode. And most of all, please subscribe. We need your support. Thank you. Hey, man, that was awesome, man.